Through Fire and Water, the life of Reb Noson of Breslov, chapter 16, the burned book. Rebbe Nachman was planning to go to Lemberg, Lvov, same city, different name, after Sukkot, a lengthy and difficult journey into Austrian-ruled territory at a time when the whole of Europe was swept up in the Napoleonic Wars. Reb Noson learned of the Rebbe's intentions when he took leave of him the day after Yom Kippur to return to Mohilev. It was hard enough for Reb Noson to travel from Mohilev to Breslov, let alone Lemberg, and he had no idea when he would see the Rebbe again. Reb Noson was expecting to go to Mohilev with a group of Breslov Chassidim who were traveling there for a major business venture. On their way, they had to stop in Tulchin. While there, they were informed that their proposed venture had been canceled, and they decided to return to Breslov. They told Reb Noson that they had arranged for him to travel to Mohilev in a wagon carrying a consignment of glass. Reb Noson writes, "In fact, their information was wrong and they should have gone to Mohilev. If they had, they would have received the money due to them. The funds are still uncollected. As for me, I told them it was beneath my dignity to travel to Mohilev in a commercial wagon. If it had been a matter of traveling to the Rebbe, it would have been worthwhile my doing so, even if the only way to travel meant suffering much embarrassment, even if I had to go on foot. But to go home in such a wagon, that I did not want. Better that I should return to Breslov with them, which I did. All this came about through the hand of God, who in his mercy is constantly planning the rectification of the world in general, and of each and every soul individually. He brought it about that these merchants felt that they should come back from Tulchin to Breslov, all in order that I could be with the Rebbe until he left for Lemberg. There is much to tell about the wonders of God and his tender mercy in arranging things in such a way that I came back to Breslov again between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. It was because of this that I was able to finish writing the Sefer HaNisraf and to submit my manuscript of Likutei Moharan to the Rebbe, making it possible to print that year. I was also able to speak with him at length and hear wonderful teachings from him, teachings that will inspire many, many people for generations to come. What can I give back to Hashem for all his kindness to me?" Reb Noson returned to Breslov the same day to find his friend Reb Naftali and a few of the other Chassidim there. That night they ate with the Rebbe, and it was, as Reb Noson writes, a time of favor, joy, and great closeness. The following morning, Reb Noson was finishing his prayers in the Beis Medrash when the Rebbe's attendant, Reb Michal, suddenly came and called him. Reb Noson went immediately to the Rebbe, who said, "Show me your Sefer right away," namely the lessons of Likutei Moharan that Reb Noson had transcribed and bound 2.5 years earlier. Reb Noson ran and brought his copy. Rebbe Nachman examined it in various places and then told Reb Noson to compile a list of the opening words of all the lessons. Reb Noson went off to do this. Just as he was finishing, the Rebbe's attendant came rushing in, telling him that the Rebbe wanted him to come immediately with the book and to bring writing paper, pen, and ink. Reb Noson went to the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe told him to sit down and then took out the work he had started dictating to him over 2 years earlier, the Sefer HaNisraf. Reb Noson writes, "I had often wondered when I would have the privilege of completing the transcription of this most awesome hidden work. That very day, God in his mercy gave me the merit of finishing it. I sat with the Rebbe for several hours. He dictated the work word by word, and I wrote. All the other Hasidim waited outside. When I finally came out, I scarcely knew the difference between day and night. Even though I had no idea what I had written, the little distant glimmer of understanding I had of the awesome greatness of this work filled me with such fire and passion that I hardly knew where I was in the world." While writing the Sefer HaNisraf, the Rebbe said, "If only you knew what you were writing." Reb Noson replied, "I really have no idea at all." Rebbe Nachman then said to him, "You do not know what it is you do not know." In later years, Reb Noson said, "I didn't understand anything of the Sefer HaNisraf. What I do remember is that it spoke about the greatness of the mitzvah of hospitality and preparing the bed for a guest. Reb Noson stayed with the Rebbe until after Sukkot. On Shmini Atzeres, Rebbe Nachman gave several lessons, among them the main part of his famous teaching of a Zamra about the way to find happiness through searching for the good points in oneself and others. The Rebbe emphasized the importance of this teaching. Reb Noson writes that it is fundamental for anyone who wants to come close to God. In later years, Reb Noson said that for him, this lesson was always fresh, and he took every opportunity to share it with others. This is in Likutei Moharan, first section, Raice Pei Beis, 282. On the night of Shmini Atzeres, Reb Noson received word that his wife had been seriously ill. He told the Rebbe, who gave a teaching the next morning, which included references to healing and the marriage partnership. The day after Simchas Torah, Rebbe Nachman was in a hurry to leave for Lemberg. He asked Reb Noson to give him his copy of Likutei Moharan, though without telling that he intended to print it. Reb Noson did not realize that this was what he wanted to do, since until that time, the Rebbe had often warned his followers not to reveal his teachings to others. The Rebbe then left on his journey. The same merchants who were to have taken Reb Noson to Mohalev before Sukkot now agreed to take him there after accompanying the Rebbe on the first leg of his trip, as far as the town of Krasnoy. They told Reb Noson to travel to Krasnoy in one of the other wagons that were also going to accompany the Rebbe. However, the Rebbe had left in such a hurry that these wagons did not leave until some time later. Reb Noson writes, "The delay caused me great distress because I was longing for the chance to have the joy of seeing his face and perhaps hearing some teachings from his lips. With God's help, I set off after him, but we could not catch up with his coach. In my confusion, I left my chest with my manuscripts behind in one of the villages on the way and had to send back for them. They were returned to me at one of our stopping points. There I found the Rebbe, but he did not speak to me at all, and soon after my arrival he left. I was forced to stay behind while they fed our horses. I then left and was very anxious to catch up with him, but by then it was night. There was a lot of mud, and we went very slowly. I was afraid that the Rebbe would conceal his whereabouts, as he usually did when traveling, and go to some inn without letting anyone know where. I would not know where he was, and then he would set off the next morning without my seeing him. However, this time he did not hide himself. All the townspeople knew where he was, and I came to his inn. At first he would not even talk to me, but after the evening meal I went into his room. Some of the other Chassidim were with him. He said to me, 'Why are you so sad? Are you sorry over what you began?' I was embarrassed. 'No,' I said in a low voice. 'Then why are you so sad?' 'I want to be a good Jew.' 'If you want to be a good Jew, what are you so worried about? The whole world is working for you. One person travels to Breslov, another goes somewhere else, all for you.' His words warmed me, and I said, 'I thought I might not see you again today. Now I have merited to see you and talk to you.' Rebbe Nachman then said to Reb Noson, 'We have to see each other again. We will see each other again and again.' The Rebbe repeated this over and over. He promised Reb Noson that they would see each other many more times, forever and ever. Early the next morning, the Rebbe left. Reb Noson and Reb Naftali had not said their prayers when they heard of his departure. They went running after the Rebbe's coach, catching up with it near a bridge outside the city. The Rebbe was pleased to see them and asked, 'What is your wish? Should I bless you or say Torah?' Reb Noson answered, 'Give us the blessing when you come home in good health, God willing. For now, teach us Torah.' Reb Noson knew that if the Rebbe did not say Torah at that moment, the teaching would be lost forever. Rebbe Nachman agreed and told them the ending of the lesson of Azamra, which he had begun on Shmini Atzeres. He said to them that it explained the reason for his journey. He then said to them, 'You should live long,' and left for Lemberg. From Krasnoy, Reb Noson continued to Mohalev. When he arrived, he faced utterly exasperated in-laws. This time, it was only partly due to Reb David Tzvi's opposition to Chassidus. More serious was the fact that Esther Shendel had been dangerously ill. Her parents had been in Kremenetz for the Yom Tovim, and when Reb Noson had left to spend Rosh Hashanah in Breslov, he had left her with no one except a maid. The townspeople had to take care of her, which caused quite a commotion. Reb David Tzvi was extremely angry with his son-in-law. However, Reb Noson took a very different view. If my father-in-law had known even a thousandth part of what I had heard and what I had attained during the time I spent with the Rebbe, he most certainly would have agreed to the trip and would even have kissed my footsteps. As for my wife, the fact that she was still alive was due entirely to the power of the Rebbe's prayers and to the Torah lesson he gave on Shmini Atzeres, into which he wove the problem of my wife's sickness in the most remarkable way and benefited her tremendously. The Rebbe was away for almost 8 months and did not return to Breslov until the middle of the summer of 1808. Reb Noson writes that because of our sins, we lost the lessons of Shabbos, Chanukah, and Shavuos, since we were not able to go to Lemberg to be with him. During the winter, Reb Noson receives word from Reb Naphtali that one of the Rebbe's followers who had been with him in Lemberg had come to Breslov with instructions to arrange to have Likutei Moharan printed. Reb Naphtali wanted Reb Noson to come to Nemirov so that the two of them could travel to Lemberg together to have Likutei Moharan printed there. However, the obstacles proved to be too many for Reb Noson, and he was unable to travel. Nevertheless, he began preparing the title page and introduction to the book. While he was doing so, there were rumors that the Rebbe had passed away in Lemberg. This caused Reb Noson deep anguish, even though he tended to discount the rumors. Shortly before Purim, the Breslover Chassidim sent a coach to Mohilev to bring Reb Noson to Breslov to prepare Likutei Moharan for the press. An emissary had arrived from the Rebbe to oversee the printing, and he was able to dispel all the rumors. After a joyous Purim in Breslov, Reb Noson returned to Mohilev, while the man from Medvedevka took the book to Ostrog to have it printed there. Rebbe Nachman then sent Reb Zalman der Kleiner to many of the leading tzaddikim of the generation for approbations, for haskamas. When he went to visit the Chayze of Lublin, Reb Noson and Reb Naphtali asked him to take kvitlach for them. When the Chayze saw the kvitlach, he was more impressed with Reb Naphtali than with Reb Noson. On hearing about this, Rebbe Nachman said lightheartedly, he is the Choseh in the present tense because he sees what is happening at that moment. When he looked at the kvitlach, Reb Naphtali was praying while Reb Noson was asleep. Before Pesach, while the Rebbe was still in Lemberg, his condition became critical. Reb Shimon was with him at the time. The Rebbe said to him, I have no one to ask for advice. The Rebbe told him he had a book in his house for which he had sacrificed his wife and children. Now, he had to face yet another serious decision. Either he had to burn the book or else die in Lemberg. Reb Shimon said to the Rebbe, if the question is whether you or the book should survive, then you should certainly burn the book and save your life. However, the Rebbe hesitated because he and only he knew of the exaltedness of the teachings contained in the book. The conversation went back and forth for a long time as the Rebbe agonized over his decision. Reb Noson writes, the Rebbe finally said to Reb Shimon, if that is the case, here's the key to my drawer. Go quickly, hurry, don't delay. Hire a coach and travel to Breslov. Don't allow yourself to be held up by rain or snow. Go as fast as you can to Breslov. When you get there, take 2 books. One of them is lying in my drawer. The second is in my daughter Adol's chest. Take them and burn them. But for God's sake, be as quick as you can. These 2 books were the Rebbe's manuscript of the Sefer HaNisraf and the copy Reb Noson had made. The Rebbe warned Reb Shimon not to try to be clever and go against his instructions, hiding a part of the book instead of burning everything. He was to carry out the Rebbe's instructions as quickly as possible. Reb Shimon left immediately and hired a carriage to take him to Breslov. But when he reached Dashev, not far from Breslov, Reb Shimon suddenly fell ill. He was laid up in bed and simply could not get up. He realized this was the work of the evil one, who wanted to prevent him from carrying out the Rebbe's instructions. We already knew that anything the Rebbe told us to do was attended by countless obstacles, especially something as important as this, on which the Rebbe's very life depended. Reb Shimon gave orders that they should carry him to the coach and lay him down inside. He was determined to make for Breslov as long as he had any life at all. All he could think about was getting to Breslov, where at least he would be able to tell somebody else to burn the books in his presence. They put him in the carriage, and he pressed on towards Breslov. As soon as he arrived there, his health returned. He took the 2 books and burned them both. It is tragic for us that we were unworthy of having so great a light as this book survive. Because of our many sins, it was decreed from heaven that the book should be burned. The Rebbe said this book would not come into the world again. We lost something that will never return. The Rebbe said that this book had to be burned, and his other work, the Likutei Moharan, would be the one to be printed and spread through the world. On Erev Pesach, April 11th, 1808, Reb Noson's son Yitzchak was born. His bris took place on the 7th day of Pesach. Reb Noson wanted his father-in-law to be the sandik, but Reb David Tzvi was seriously ill and too weak even to hold the baby. Less than a month later, Reb David Tzvi Auerbach passed away. Reb Noson was present when he breathed his last. Reb Noson remained in Moalev until early July when he heard that Rebbe Nachman had returned to Breslov. Reb Noson was overjoyed. He left for Breslov immediately, arriving on Friday, July 8th. He writes, "I literally came back to life. May God's name be praised eternally for his awesome kindness to us and to the whole world. The Rebbe's return alive from Lemberg was a complete miracle. All the doctors had testified that he could not survive more than a month, and that he would certainly not be able to survive the journey from Lemberg to Breslov. But God worked the most amazing miracles. Not only did the Rebbe come back home, but he survived for another 2 years and more. In those 2 years, he filled us with life and inspiration, revealing the most amazing and awesome lessons and stories, teachings unlike anything else in the world. He was so weak that it seemed that he might die any day, but even so, he worked to elevate us and rectify all the worlds even more than ever before." Reb Noson continues, "It is my belief that the main heritage of the Rebbe that we have today stems from those last years. Blessed be the name of God forever for this goodness. Anyone who is willing to study the Rebbe's holy words as recorded in his books and pay careful attention to what he says will be able to get a glimpse of the goodness and kindness God has done to us." Reb Noson stayed in Breslov for 10 days, after which he went to Nemirov. When he had moved to Moalev nearly 2 years earlier, Esther Shendel had wanted to remain there. Since then, however, she had been seriously ill several times, and now her father had died. This made her more than willing to return to Nemirov. Her mother also felt insecure in Moalev and wanted to move. While in Nemirov, Reb Noson prepared a house for his family and then went to Moalev to bring them, returning with them in mid-August after Tisha B'Av. After 2 years of exile in Moalev, Reb Noson was delighted. In Nemirov, he was again close to the Rebbe and able to visit him frequently.